All right, welcome everybody. So today we're going to talk about a game that is close to my heart. It's a game that I played a long time ago. For everything that you ever do, no matter what it is, there will always be a first time. And this was the first time I ever beat a Grandmaster. This is a game with Alex Shabalov from the World Open 2008. And we have, we're going to take a look at how it went. I think I played quite a good game. There's a lot of interesting points, but I didn't play a perfect game by any stretch, and we'll see some mistakes from my point of view as well. Okay, so game started with e4, c5, knight f3, d6, and Shabalov made a really bad blunder here. What is white's best move? Anyone says anything other than d4, I don't know what to tell you. Aryan Gupta, bishop b5 check now. Bishop, if you're going to play an anti-Sicilian, bishop b5 check is definitely the best option you have, but I still think you should be, the best way to fight against the Sicilian is to play d4 and to grab the bull by the horns. Anyhow, Shabalov played this move c3, which just feels like a stupid version of the Alapin to me, because after knight f6, he is unable to play e5. So he continued with bishop d3, knight c6, castle. All right, so let's start here. I think it's pretty clear to everybody that black should be fine. It's not like white has done anything wildly ambitious, but we do have to figure out where our pieces belong and how we want to coordinate our development. And I actually didn't know almost any theory at the time. What I ended up playing turned out to just be the best all the way through. That was just luck. I didn't know it. It wasn't like I was prepared, and I certainly wasn't good enough to figure it out. But while we're here, let's see if we can figure out a reasonable way for black to coordinate. What should black do with the pieces? Tanner, I'm teaching a lesson. Get out of here. Okay, I'm getting attacked. Just a second. Tanner, I'm teaching a lesson. I'll hang with you later. Okay, so Ryo has an interesting idea. You want to share with me, Ryo? I got to...
So we're gonna play bishop g4, creating a pretty unpleasant pin. I mean, our idea eventually will be to go knight e5, but for now we're just gonna go e6, bishop e7, and develop. It's kind of annoying, and g5 is a possible idea. Okay, I'm not gonna say it.
So I really like this plan of playing bishop g4, getting the bishop outside of the pawn chain, and then playing e6. Because basically, we have to figure out what to do with this bishop. And to that effect, we have three options. We can go g6, e6, or e5. So if we go g6, this I think plays right into white's hands. Like if we were to play g6, bishop c2, bishop g7, and d4, one thing I talk a lot about in my classical Sicilian course on Chessable is there's only two sensible ways for white to play for an advantage against the bishop on g7 in the Sicilian. One is to castle long and go through the h-pawn and try to give mate. Obviously, that didn't happen. But the other is to be able to play c3, d4. And here white pulled that off. And I think this bishop on g7 ends up being a bad piece. I'm not sure if maybe there's any funny business with bishop g4 here. But like, let's say black were to castle when probably bishop g4 was better. I think this position's pretty unpleasant for black. You just have a bit less space. It's not really easy to activate the pieces and pressure the center. So I'm not thrilled with this option. e5 is certainly not stupid, but it feels like it weakens the white scores a little bit to me. And additionally, if black ever wants to make the d5 break at some point, the e5 pawn can become weak. So I really like this idea to play bishop g4 first and then e6. Because if you play e6, here white's going to go d4 without a ton of discussion, and then you just end up in like some really bad French, which I don't think we want. The bishop being stuck in the pawn chain is not great. So I like this move, bishop g4. I certainly don't think black is better yet, but in practice it might feel like he's having more fun. So white probably should have played bishop c2, which is consistent with his overall plan. And then we go something like, say, e6, and you cannot really get away with d4 here. I don't think you want to let your pawn structure on the king get crippled like this. Even just d5 though, like a structure like this one, I think is totally acceptable for black if he has this active bishop on g4. But this is probably what should have been done, and say we go something like d3, bishop e7, rook e1, and castle. I think this is just a pretty normal position. It's pretty quiet, not much is going on. Black is certainly equalized, but yeah, it's just a game. Shabalov played h3, and while this is not a mistake per se, I do think this is asking for trouble and a step in the wrong direction. So what are we gonna, so he's put the question to our bishop. What are we going to play here? So you gotta be a little bit careful, Sepper. That's not a great idea. Okay, so Alice, you want to share with us? Okay.
So I would do bishop h5 and just keep the queen on the knight on f3 and the queen on h5 and then continue with the e6 and bishop e7 plan. Yeah,
so I think this is the best way. The biggest reason is that bishop takes f3 might look tempting because we get to go knight e5 and take back our bishop pair, but do we actually? There's this quite annoying check, which would ruin your day, and now you're definitely worse. So bishop h5 is a good start. White played bishop c2, consistent with the general plan, e6, d3, and what do we think white is going to try to accomplish in the next few moves? Like, let's say, I don't know, bishop e7 is fine, but what do we think white's going to be trying to pull off in the next few moves? Alexander Wang says d4, e5, but if you wanted to play d4, I don't think playing d3 first is going to help. Bishop f4, rook e1, e5, I don't think so. Keep in mind, this move d3, this is sort of giving up on playing d4. I mean, it's almost admitting defeat. But yeah, Ryo has this right. Let's see if anybody else can figure it out. Roger has it. Roger, you want to share with us? I can barely hear you. You have to speak closer to the microphone.
Oh, so it's a bit like the Rilopez when the position isn't open with d4, and in a lot of times when black plays bishop g4, you kick the bishop away, and then white wants to go knight d2, knight f1, knight g3.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So knight b d2 came. And white has this plan of simply going rook e1 and then chasing this bishop. And if we go bishop g6, there comes knight h4. So this is slow, and it's not like this checkmates us. It grabs the, but it will grab the bishop pair, which eventually will matter. So I do think if white's just allowed to do that without any kind of a fight, he's probably going to end up slightly better. But we should be able to find something to do. And so here I was really happy with the move I came up with at this point. Let's see if you guys can figure out what black should do. Okay, Ryan, that's on the right track, but I'm wondering if you're being a bit too direct. Okay. So a lot of people are telling me some version of g5, either g5 right now or rook g8 then g5. I do think this is the right plan. So basically this is taking advantage of white having played h3 too early, because we haven't committed to castling yet, and it takes a long time for white to play rook e1, knight f1, knight g3. So throwing g5, g4 and starting a kingside attack is a very natural thing to do. But my issue with g5 is, let's say white goes g4. Bishop g6, and we take this one. I guess h5, yeah? Maybe we're just going to kill him here, but still looks kind of good. g5 directly. It's not that dissimilar from what I did. Just wondering if there's any Because this really looks pretty bad for black, or for white, excuse me. I have a strong suspicion he's just going to get himself crushed. I don't know though. Say white plays f4. I mean, we've opened the h file and rook h4, yeah. Austin is saying queen e1, but... Or did you mean queen e1 at a different moment? Here? Yeah, but here we will play g4 and open the g file. Huh, interesting. g5 right away might be decent. I played queen c7, which, now that I'm actually thinking about it, I haven't really checked this game much with a modern machine, but now that I'm actually thinking about it, it might have made more sense to play g5 directly, because if I play queen c7, honestly, if I play anything other than castling, it sort of advertises that I might want to be throwing g5, g4, and castling queenside. My thought when I played queen c7 was I'm going to wait for this guy to play rook e1. And now I'm not going to castle. Here, knight f1 will prevent g5 because the bishop can take it. And I thought now and only now I can throw this move, which seems pretty reasonable here, because I've convinced white to spend a move on rook e1. And if we follow something similar like this, I think it's pretty clear that the inclusion of queen c7 and rook e1 is heavily in black's favor, because it means I'm faster to castle long and get my rook to g8, and I'm also faster to play d5 and go give mate on h2. And I think rook e1 is sort of misplaced. You'd probably rather have the rook on f1 anyway to play f4 and bolster it somehow. And so Aryan says this looks like a better version than the direct g5. I agree. The problem here was it gave white this option to play queen e1. Now, which stops g5 for a moment. Now, on a scale of 1 to terrifying, queen e1 is not the move that's going to make you go poop in your pants. Like, come on, this is not a scary move. You're like, okay, fine, he stopped me from playing g5, but this is so completely counterproductive when you're considering his best plan is to bring the knight to g3, right? I mean, you know, the queen on e1 clearly does not make it particularly scary for anything for black to deal with. But it does mean that it's a bit harder to get g5 in, because I don't think we want to just throw g5 here. If white is allowed to take this pawn without having to play g4 first, I'm really not convinced we're actually going to mate him. I mean, it's still interesting, I'm sure. I guess there's probably still compensation, but I'm not nearly as convinced by our attacking chances here as I would be if we had gone something like g5, g4, takes, and h5 like this. When white has been forced to play g4, which loosens the pawn cover around his king and allows us to play h5 using the g4 pawn as a hook, here I really think white's going to get checkmated. So I'm actually wondering, maybe queen c7 was a mistake. It looks like in my annotations I actually claimed it was best. But yeah, so maybe you guys' g5 move was better. Anyhow, Shabalov goes queen e1, which of course ruins his plan of playing knight f1 to g3, but it does make it a little bit harder for us to play g5. So what should we do now? Aryan says rook g8. Maybe. Yeah, I prefer to just castle long. In general, I don't love this idea to play rook g8, because I do think that when you play rook g8, when you play g5 after that, it's going to be harder. After g4, you will still lose the g5 pawn. Especially if you play rook hg8. Let's say white, I don't know, goes a3, g5, and now g4. This rook is kind of would like to be on h8 to throw h5 and blow up the position that way. I don't know. This might still just be really promising for black, but I think castling first and potentially getting ready for the other rook to come to g8 might make more sense. So castles came, a3. And now I will accept one of two moves here as best for black, but I will certainly not accept the move I played. What should black do? So a couple of people are giving me rook dg8. It's very primitive, but I do think it's a very reasonable move as well. H6 is also fine, which is a little bit less caveman, but it also is going to be more effective at getting at getting g5 through. What do we think of this move? Why did I make it? We'll say very high level, slow. Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, anyone who's ever played white in the Sicilian, which is, it's more typical for white to be castling long and attacking the kingside as opposed to the other way around. Anyone who's ever played white in the Sicilian knows that you play king b1 pretty frequently. So if you don't know what to do, and like for me, I wasn't sure, do I want to play h6? Do I want to play rook g8? Oftentimes just playing like the king move, which you feel like you'll probably have to play at some point, makes some sense. But to me, this just seems like a wasted tempo. If I recall what I was thinking about during the game, or the reason I had done it, was I was trying to play prophylactically against b4, because here I can take, and then at the end of all this, the a7 pawn is defended. But just looking back at this, I wouldn't have even remotely considered taking this pawn today. In the game, I figured out white has a winning continuation here, but like, I wouldn't have even bothered today. Like, it would never occur to me to go grab this pawn. So let's just flip the board. How does white put black out of his misery for being an idiot? Yeah, Alice has got this. So does Narayan. Okay, we can call on Narayan.
So here you can play the move queen e3 to attack the a7 pawn. Now a6 is forced. You can also go b6, but that's weak. But
b6, we can play knight d4 and then b5, and you will not stop a knight from getting to b6 to c6.
Yeah, so if a6, now b5, and yeah.
This is not going black's way. Not a pawn worth taking, right? Yeah. So anyhow, it sort of transpires that returning back to this position, you can't take on b4. But the question is, like, how scary is b4 actually? And A, I don't think it's very scary, but B, if we're thinking about what white's trying to accomplish, I don't really think b takes c5 opening the b file is going to be something black should be worried about. White's plan, I think, is going to be, or at least the way he played in the game, is to play the move b5, kick my knight potentially to like an ugly a5 score, and then go c4, maybe attack that knight, maybe play e5 with this bishop on b2. These are sensible ways for white to continue. And I don't really think any of those plans, king b8 helps black's position very much. That's a point that Aryan is making. The king b8 just would not. It's a wasted move, and it allows white to start executing his queenside play when I could have done other stuff. So, oftentimes in the Sicilian, when you're playing the white side and you end up playing king b1, a big point is if it's a waiting move, or if you're trying to stop something like actual prophylactically. So, for example, if I were to just give like one case of where king b1 is a good move for white in the Sicilian, let's say we just look at like one of these mainline dragons. So there's endless examples of where king b1 is a good move, but take we just like some standard Yugoslav attack, and if black goes like take and bishop e6, black's best plan here now is to play queen a5, rook fc8, and go. So like if you play h4, for example, queen a5 comes, and now he's threatening to take a2, so you probably have to play king b1 anyway, and then black goes rook fc8, and now he's potentially threatening to sacrifice this one and then take on a2. But given that we have to play king b1 anyway, if you start with king b1 here, which is a move that you were going to play no matter what, you've also prevented black from playing queen a5 because of this tactical resource knight d5. So here, like, it's not like it's always a bad idea to waste a tempo with the king. Here it was the best move, but there's a very specific and concrete reason for it, and it was also a move that we knew we were going to have to play at some point anyway. If you compare that to what we got in the actual game, we have to think, one, is there a specific reason to play king b8? Like, is there a move that a way that this helps our position, or some like thing that we're trying to prevent from our opponent? I mean, the answer was yes. I was trying to prevent b4. I was just completely wrong that king b8 prevented b4. So that's one thing, is it doesn't really like prevent anything, so to speak. And then two is this a move that we were going to have to play at some point anyway? So we might as well play it now to maintain flexibility. And I think the answer to that is also no. I don't believe we needed to ever play king b8 here. So anyhow, the game went king b8 and white went b4. So here he, of course, called my bluff, so to speak. I'm not going to take on b4 twice. And at this point, I realized king b8 was dumb, and I shouldn't have done it. But still, I made one less than perfect move. That doesn't mean the position is horrible. Let's find what black should play. You guys have already sort of answered this already, but so you can play h6 or rook dg8 or both fine. I'll accept either one. All right, so game continued with h6. White went b5, knight a5, c4, and now g5. And here I think white probably should have played some kind of e5 at some point, but bishop b2 came, and I wasn't too thrilled about playing g4 right away. There can become some tactical problems after takes, because we don't want to take with the knight. And bishop g4, e5 stuff will start to hang, which is not great. So I played rook hg8 so that in the event of e5, I can move my knight on f6 without the rook hanging in the corner at the end. So here, if white had gone along and played bishop c3 with the point that he wants to threaten this knight, I don't know, hoping move the d2 knight out of the way, and then, I don't know, I mean, if you could imagine white going knight d2, knight b1, force me to play b6, then taking this, and then going knight back to d2, knight b3, knight a5, he will win this pawn, he will get the knight to c6, and he will beat me on the queen side. There's nothing I can do to stop that. But if we think about how long this will take, knight b1 is one move, bishop takes a5 is 2, knight back to d2, 3, knight b3, 4, knight takes a5, 5, and then knight c6, and then finally white gets like a winning position. We're talking 6 moves here. Do we think that black is slower than that on the king side, or is black faster than that? Everyone's saying faster. Like, there's no doubt about it. We go take, and like, you want to try something like this, it's just like, say we go take, knight b d2, I don't know, maybe d5, and I think this is not even, I think it's not even going to be remotely close. I think black's going to win this race by like a mile. Like, I think white's going to get completely crushed way too fast. Bishop d6 is coming, and this is going to be bad news. Maybe just rook g7, rook g8 is not so stupid either. Like, it just feels like black is going to win this race by a lot, like really a lot. And if you were in a more strategic mood, you could play bishop f6 and then stick your bishop on c3. It just feels like this will fail. So the whole bishop c3 idea didn't work, and instead Shabalov played knight h2 to get out of the way of g4. So what should we do now? I have to be careful. A couple people have given me d5. I don't think this is the right plan. I mean, he will take in bishop e5, and we're losing material, so this is not great. Actually, maybe we can play bishop d6, but it doesn't feel great. Let's see. Raya says knight d7 with idea of bishop f6. It's not totally stupid, but I think we can be more incisive. All right, so what's the move we really want to play here? Like, if white hadn't played knight h2, what was our next move going to be? Everyone says g4. Knight h2. He's sort of trying to play prophylactically against g4. Do we believe that he has actually stopped us from playing g4? All right, so we're going to throw g4. No need to rush, no need to be patient. I don't believe white stopped it, so we can go and try to open the position. And white could play h4 here, and you have to be able to switch gears sometimes. Because here when white plays h4, I think our attack is basically over. But I also think that's totally fine. Like, let's say we go knight d7 and he plays g3, and you go bishop f6. It's like, hello, nice knight. Like, at some point, we're just gonna, once we've exchanged off his dark squared bishop, we can play in the center later. Ariana's saying we should play knight e5 instead. Roger says, what about h5 bishop? It's also not a great piece, but I think we'll have an easier time fixing it. Like, if we just go d5 next and then play bishop g6, our bishop is going to have a functional role pretty soon. And I think white's position is really suspicious. I don't know. What will machine say, guys? How much better is black here? A lot. -2, I don't think that much, but it will be, I think it'll be quite good for black. Oh, good grief. How am I so stupid? Somebody was saying knight e5 was a better move. Yeah, some knight e5 is stronger, sure. Okay, knight e5 is a better move here. So somebody said that, and I should have listened to you. What can I say? Knight e5 comes, and the machine was saying like f5, bishop f6, and this knight on h2 is so bad, and the bishop on h5 isn't great, but it has some scope to improve. And white's really sad about having to play g3 and weakening the squares. But yeah, Aryan Goodlow, well spotted. You were right, knight e5 was stronger. Anyhow, I don't think, when you play g4, I mean, if you're waiting for a moment to play g4, for when white cannot respond with h4, it's basically never going to come, because what are you telling me you're going to do? You're going to move this knight out of the way somewhere so that you can play g4, and then he can't play h4 because you take it. But if you move the knight out of the way, it's harder to play g4 because now the g4 square is weaker. It doesn't feel like you have a way to improve your chances of playing g4 under better circumstances later. So I think we should throw it now. Anyhow, Shabalov didn't want to play such a passive move, and he played queen e3. All right, so now what? All right, guys, let's focus on the games and not on the on engines. Supper has an interesting idea. Yeah, guys, try to stay focused. Some interesting moves have been suggested. So a few people have given me d5. Let's take a look at this. So if we go e takes d5, what do we want now? Bishop d6, but bishop takes f6. I'm not sure these complications are going to work out well for black. So take, and then now we're already a pawn down. The rook on d8 is loose, which I do think we care about, and then g3 is threatened. Ryo says not bishop d6. You want to play something else? E takes d5. Okay. Doesn't feel amazing to me somehow. So if I start centralizing my pieces, go bishop d6, I take this one, take... This does not seem amazing for black. There's too much hanging stuff. Rook e8, we can take it. Oh, people are saying there's bishop f4 at the end. Oh, okay. But bishop f4 here, I can even just take it. And this endgame should be good for, like, there's too much hanging stuff in black's position. But I think people were saying that instead, after d5 takes, and here, that in this position, there's bishop f4 at the end of this variation, but I take this, and then rook takes d8, and messy, yeah? Black certainly has compensation, but is it going to be enough? Like, let's say we go queen e1, take in g3. I'm not sure I believe this for black. You don't have enough pieces. Like, this knight is not... If the knight's on d4, fine, but I don't think we have enough pieces to give mate here. Oh no, guys. Is the machine going to say black has enough? I don't think it will. Let's see. I think this was the d5 was a little bit too spirited. So a couple of people have given me rook g6, which is not a subtle move at all. You clearly want to bring a rook to g8 and double on the g file. That is sensible. Let's think, how can I punish this? This looks pretty reasonable. What if I play e5? Austin says, why not rook g7? It feels like it's asking for trouble. Like, for example, after e5 here, you probably lose material directly. Yeah, we're losing material here. GH3, nah, I don't believe this. I think we'll survive here with white. And survive and win. I don't think you're gonna mate me. D5 and, I don't know, F4, let's say, and next move is rook F2, and I don't believe you will checkmate me here. Or queen takes H3 even. Actually, why couldn't I just take this one? Yeah, queen H3. And, yeah, white wins. I think that's a bit too spirited. Rook G6 makes a lot more sense than rook G7, because after E5, we're not gonna hang. This is probably pretty reasonable for black. I don't love allowing e5, but seems decent. I'm a little worried d4 will come at some inopportune moments and the rook will be hanging, but maybe it's not a big deal. Not sure. Rook g6 is decent. It definitely feels like a reasonable move. I'll accept it. Anyhow, I took on h3 in the game. I was a bit more direct. And then here, I think this actually was the moment in the game I was most proud of. So when I was young, I basically didn't know any opening theory at all. I had pretty good tactical vision and a good feel for the initiative, and I could throw stuff at people's kings, but I wasn't really good at almost anything. Here we have a decision to make. We are playing bishop g4. But do we stop on e2 first and provoke rook fe1? And that's something, this sort of nuance between whether we want white's rook to be on f1 or on e1 is something I would think that young version of me was not particularly good at. And I'm glad that I came with the right decision here. And it's not easy, actually, because both the rook on either e1 or f1 has, there's clear benefits and drawbacks to each. And we have to decide where we want this rook to be. And I think I made the right decision. So let's see what you guys come up with here. Maybe we can make a poll. I don't think we can. Some interesting lines. Okay, so let's see. A lot of people are suggesting that that in the event of bishop e2 and then bishop g4, we will get something like this, and at some point this rook will come e3 to g3, and that this makes it easier for white to defend. That's an interesting point. I question its relevance because I suspect white is going to have to take this bishop on g4. I mean, the knight on h2 is just really bad. And then once we go knight takes g4, rook e3 is going to be harder to come by. This should be 2 first because rook e1. I don't think white's going to play queen e3, so I'm not wildly concerned about that. But you're saying knight d5, e takes d5, and here there's no queen e1, but there is f4, and then you're a piece down. So I don't think that's great. Also here, I'm sure f4 is the best, but I suspect you're completely screwed in this position too. Where I think the 3 pieces will run circles around the queen because you don't have much to attack. So I don't think that's wildly relevant. G4 directly. Okay, so Sepper has an interesting variation. Let's talk about that. Where we go take, and then this move bishop d1, with the hope to kick the knight away and then play rook e3, rook g3 next. That is very reasonable. Let's think. How would black want to proceed? I somehow really don't believe rook e3 is coming. Let's say we go knight e5. I mean, you're not, like, rook e3, I always have bishop g5. Saying f4 maybe? That's a thought. If you're playing f4 though, and we get a position like this one, now I'm claiming your rook is definitely misplaced. But no, here knight takes f4 is just bloody murder next move, I think. Rook f1 and we go e5 and you cannot stop a knight from coming to f4. I think that's going to be the end of the world. So this is one of those situations where I think that it's better for the rook to be on f1. So yeah, I think in general the rook is better on f1 because supporting this f4, the f4 will really do a very good job of keeping the queen on c7 out of play, and also it controls the e5 square, which can become important, and the rook on f1 supporting that is very helpful. Additionally, we're going to find out that this rook on e1 ends up on a loose square. Essentially, the only 2 reasons I can think of that this rook would be better on e1 are to support an e5 thrust or to play rook e3. With the knight on g4 like this, I don't think either of those are wildly relevant, but I can see spots where I would see why a rook would be better on f1. So the game did continue, takes, bishop d1, knight e5, and then rather than f4, Shabalov played the move knight f1, which was a sensible enough move, getting the knight closer to the defense. So now what are we going to do? People are giving me bishop f6. I like it. So bishop f6 is nice. Black would love to get an opposite bishop situation where he can anchor his bishop on d4. Like his bishop will be like much better than white's. So here I believe white should have played rook b1. And this is really a really tough move. In the game, Shabalov played rook a2, which has the very sensible idea that if he ever wants to play bishop c1, that this rook can potentially defend laterally along the second rank, but this will fail for reasons that we'll see later. Rook b1 was stronger, so we'll get to that in a second. So after rook a2, how should black proceed here? There's a very strong strategic move. G6. I don't think we're going to be able to crash through in the G file, guys. Like, white can always play G3 whenever he wants. And also, rook G6, there's bishop H5. It's not that easy to just double the rooks in the D file and crash straight through. I think we have to be a little bit more strategic and nuanced. Yeah, so Vihan, I like that. You want to share with us?
So you play queen e7 to bring the queen into the attack?
Yeah, so it's not just that, but also when we move this knight, if we can play knight g6 next and threaten this bishop, like if we trade these, I think if we trade the dark squared bishops, like white can more or less resign strategically. So for example, if white played like knight e3 or something, no, that hangs d3, so that's like really stupid. But if he goes, I don't know, bishop e2, and we go knight g6, if we can force these dark squared bishops off the board, I think a knight landing on f4 is absolutely the end of the game. So putting the queen to e7 allows for knight g6 to reroute this knight towards f4, and also allows us to try to start exchanging off the pieces. So here, in the game, white played bishop c1, which was a bad move. What should black play in response? There's a very important and very powerful move here. Bishop g5, not to be recommended, guys. Just be a bit more careful than that. F4, bishop h4, but you lose a lot of time and you're not attacking anything. Like if you go bishop g5, f4, bishop h4, and white goes g3, and his next move is rook g2, like he clearly has the position under control, and you're just losing a lot of time. You're gonna have to retreat your pieces pretty soon anyway. If you were saying knight g6, that's not the dumbest move I've ever seen, but I think we have something significantly stronger. So Vihan is suggesting rook g6 followed by h5. The problem with rook g6 is I think white will play bishop h5 and attack your rook directly. Yeah, white's pieces are surprisingly effective from the back rank. That's true. This rook on a2 is coming to defend laterally. So we have to worry a little bit about f4 now. I think the previous move f4 was not great. Here, if there's a way we can get ourselves ready for f4, that will make us happy. So what should we play? Yeah, Sepahar, that's correct. You want to share with us?
So I think h5 is right.
Yeah. I really like this move. We control the g4 square. We gain more space on the king side. It means we're ready to meet f4 with knight g4. And of course, we're not worried about this pawn getting taken. If queen takes h5, there's knight d3. And if bishop h5, there's rook h8. Or knight b3 apparently was even stronger. But rook h8 also looks very good. So let's imagine instead of bishop c1, white played bishop h5. Aiming to stop us from playing. It does a few things. One, it stops h5. Two, if black wants to play knight g6, he'll potentially allow the bad bishop to be exchanged. What should black play here? What's been our one problem piece all game that can all of a sudden get fixed? Everyone's saying this. Knight b3. We can fix this bad knight on a5, and it will come to d4 or something where it will be exchanged off for a good bishop. And I think black's in fantastic shape. So this brings us to why I said rook a2 is not a great move. The best move was rook b1. And the point is that after queen e7, bishop h5, now if you compare this to the game here, we cannot play knight b3 because of bishop takes e5 and rook takes b3. And so the computer claimed that white was sort of okay here. This is really hard for a human to find, even a very strong one like Shabalov. And he was, I know, for you guys, he's probably not so scary because he's older now and he's not very high rated. But trust me, like vintage Shabalov, like when I was playing him, he was like 2650 and he was many-time US champion. He was really, really good. And so even him at that level, really sort of in his prime years, was unable to do much about this. So instead, he played rook a2, which was a poor decision. Queen e7 with the idea of knight g6, bishop c1 came, h5. So our whole goal is to control the g4 square so that we're not worried about f4. And white played knight h2, doubling down on trying to fight for the g4 square, and again trying to prevent us and trying to play f4 next. Now again, what should we do to prevent white from playing f4? I don't think we can play knight g4 here. He's going to take it. Give me a full variation and a reason behind it, guys. Bishop h4, I think, is too optimistic. Okay, so Narayan, that's close, but there's some key points you should notice. So, yeah, it's basically right. Okay, so Raya, you have a variation you want to share with us?
So I'm gonna go bishop g5. My idea obviously is to trade the extra bishop.
And if you have bishop h4, and here I don't have g3 anymore, yeah?
Yeah, so and if you go rook e3 after f4,
yes. You can play knight g6. This is probably pretty reasonable. Although I'm not sure I love this, honestly, though. Knight f3 maybe, or something. I don't think we can play g3 now. Knight takes f4 is crushing, but maybe knight f3 isn't the worst. This is probably not so terrible.
bishop f6.
Yeah, okay, but rook back somewhere. Is this the end of the world for white? I mean, I think black's better, but I also think we've missed a shot. So Soper is saying knight g4 here, but I'm not sure about that either. Say we go take, rook h8, and queen f3. My next move is g3 and then rook h2, and I do not believe you will have the firepower needed to checkmate me. And I can always run with my king towards the center, and this doesn't feel that amazing. Maybe it was actually better to start with bishop. No, bishop b2, there's bishop f2. But even this, is this so terrible? I don't think this is so bad for white. You could even flick in this move if you wanted. Is there any reason for black to be better here? I don't think so. I can go rook g8, but knight h6 or something. I mean, I don't know. Everyone's saying white's better. I don't know about that. It just looks sort of unclear to me. We go bishop g5. We threaten knight f6. It's feels like we've lost control and things are getting messy, and I'm not sure I love it. But also queen f3. I mean, rook dg8, someone was saying here, but we can go king f1, and I don't think this is that scary.
Knight b3?
So knight b3 here, and then here. Oh, there's the check on d2, I see. What if we start with bishop b2? That's probably better. This doesn't seem that amazing to me. So, I think we're sort of rushing things, but somebody found what I think was a better move, which was to play h4. And the point is that now f4 becomes impossible because the queen gets trapped. After rook g3, we do not take this queen, as then e takes f6 will come and white gets too many pieces, but you can just take back and the queen on h3 is trapped and black wins. So I think h4 just sort of stops white from playing f4, and now we're really ready to start regrouping with stuff like knight g6 and bishop g5, and white will not be able to play g3, and this pawn on h4 is gaining space and cramping white's position. I think white's in huge trouble here. So the game went knight f1, and then knight g6, so I'm ready for bishop g5 next, and white played f4. Now, how are we going to take advantage of provoking that rook to e1? Knight h2 f1 is sad. That is true. But yeah, Austin Tang, you have it. You want to share with us?
I would play bishop f6.
Bishop where?
C3, sorry.
Yeah, bishop c3. Attack this rook, gain a tempo on it, cannot go to e3, cannot play bishop d2, cannot play knight d2. He has to play this move, and then what?
And then queen f6.
And then how does white defend this pawn? If rook f2, bishop d4 comes and f4 drops. So after queen f6, white's in huge trouble. I mean, he's dead lost. Okay, so queen f3 came. And actually, Shabalov did me a huge favor here with the move queen f3. So Zoe says, why not bishop d4 check with the same idea? I think that you sort of want to keep this move in the reserve. It's probably still very good, but queen f6 and now provoking the rook to e2 just sort of blocks white's pieces nicely. I mean, I don't know, queen f3 here, and maybe this is, yeah, like this. I'm sure this is very good for black, but you're not crushing right away. And in fact, the tactic that I put in the game does not work here. So after f4, bishop c3, rook e2, queen f6, queen f3, Shabalov offered me a draw here, which did me a huge favor because it immediately alerted me to a key variation. So how should black play here? Keep in mind there's more than one way to win a chess game. See a real variation. Okay, so a couple of people are someone gave me check and then king h1, h3, but we go g3, and why is this so bad? Here there's 95. No, it's 95. Okay, but yeah, people are pointing this out. Probably bishop d4 check is fine actually, but h3 first I like better. So people are pointing out h3 is the move. And the point is that what I had realized after queen f3 when he offered the draw was I can go knight e5, of course, and attack his queen. This is also a nice reason of having provoked the rook to e2. If you had played something like bishop d4 check and here, you don't have the knight e5 move anymore for more reasons than one. But one is that the pawn is unpinned, but a bigger one is this bishop can take back. We'll see that in a second. So bishop c3, rook e2. And here, if we go knight e5, white cannot take it. He must bring the queen back. But the problem now is we didn't accomplish very much by bringing the knight to e5. It doesn't have a great place to go from here. And so I noticed then I would go back to g6, and he goes back to f3. That's clearly what Shabalov had in mind when he offered me the draw, was that knight e5 was the most natural move. But it immediately alerted me to this possibility of knight e5. And then we have to think, how do I improve upon that variation? What we can do is start with the move h3. And this means that now after g3, our attack is over. Like, it's very clear, this pawn on g3 bolstered by the knight, the attack is totally over. We're not going to mate him. But we don't need to mate him. We go knight e5, the queen is kicked away, and because the queen no longer has access to the h3 square because we've played h3, we just take this pawn, and then we take this pawn, and then we go 2 pawns up and just crash straight through in the center and win with material. That's perfectly good enough to win a chess game. So white's now caught in this between a rock and a hard place, because if he plays g3, his center collapses, and if he doesn't play g3, he will get checkmated. So it's sort of, your goal is to win the game. You don't need to mate him. You don't need to collapse the center. Just find some way to mortally weaken white's position, and then he has to make his choice here. So bishop d4 check and then h3, as a couple people gave, is probably fine too. Because I guess g3 again, knight e5 works. It feels like a worse version, but it probably is totally fine. There came h3, he played knight h2, which is a very bad sign, and of course we go take g2, and you can't take back. So bishop e3 came, and now bishop d4 is easy enough, aiming to weaken the f4 square. Rook f2, I went take, queen h4, bishop g4, and here absolutely everything wins. There's no doubt about it. Like, you can just play knight b3 and white cannot take on f2. It's winning every which way, but there is one really nice way to finish the game off. Let's see if anyone wants to find it. The game only lasted 2 more moves, but that's really nice. I don't know. Let's just go over this, because nobody has found it yet, but every single move that every single person has given, 10 or 3 more minutes, then we'll play, okay? 3 more minutes. Sorry, guys. Every single move, no one's found it yet, but every single move that everybody is given just wins the game. So I'll just show what I did, which was e5. And the point is now if I get my knight to f4, that's a problem. But there's the key point that after f takes e5, we need to see that there's this idea to play knight takes e5, and when this bishop moves away, we take the knight and then go make a new queen, which is quite a nice way to finish it off. So I don't know if Vihan, you had said that with the, but had you given the idea of queen h2 with mate? I don't know. Yeah. Anyhow, this was an interesting game. It certainly wasn't perfect from me, but I think I played at quite a bit higher level than, you know, the old 2350 version of Sam I would expect. But, you know, it was my first ever win against a grandmaster, and I was certainly pretty happy at the time.